This event is brought to you by World Pro Racing, the Malta Motorsport Federation, Game Breaker Malta, GMR Entertainment, WJ England and Son, Melita, Media Looks, Restream.io, Gaming Malta, VisitMalta.com, and TVM Sport.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
This is so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real. And so, we are here. We are here at the Last Chance Saloon. As many drivers as there are going to be here today, they're all going to sit around a table. They're all going to look at each other, and they will say to each other, only two of us can make it to the final dance. But ultimately, right now, it's all about one race. It's all about getting around 15 laps of a legendary circuit. The top two find themselves in the best possible scenario. You are watching here for the Malta Motorsport Federation sanctioned event here today. It's a casual race, but it is so much more than that for race number 5. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching on World Pro Racing YouTube, Facebook Live and Twitch. To those watching on Motorsport TV and TVM Sport, and for those joining us for the first time on ESTV. I'm Jake Sperry, joined alongside by Nicholas Hillerbrand, Justin and Nathan Mifsud on the cameras for us today, with the Chief Race Director Adrian Fagayo and the main steward for today's racing on Gran Turismo Sport, George Muscat here. This event officially in collaboration with Game Breaker as well. This is going to be a sensational race. 2 drivers go to the grand final next week. We've seen 8 already find themselves at the best possible place, Nicholas. Now it's about the final contenders who think they can challenge the establishment that has already been made.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting race. The final 2 contenders for the grand finale, and honestly, the races that we've seen so far, it's been quite big outright victories. I wonder if we're going to have it different this time. But either way, the 2 best drivers today, alongside everyone else so far out of these casual races, will come together again next week in the grand finale, and it is already just the name of it, the grand finale. It's quite a word, to just say, and I think everyone, just because of that, would already have quite some motivation to, finish under the top 2 here today.
And that's the key as well. This is Group 3 category driving here on Gran Turismo Sport. All these categories of vehicles effectively fit in the same sort of bracket as a GT3 that you would find in the real world of motorsports. And there have been so many very interesting vehicles that have put themselves up near the front. So many great drivers that have got themselves close. And ultimately, this organised heats that we have seen have brought ourselves to the culmination. It will be next week where that final becomes so very, very important for everybody's action. But there are more things available on the horizon for that. Most importantly, at the end of today's broadcast, after the racing that we have seen, we do have an announcement on the winner that we will have for the fantastic prize. If you have been tuning in for us earlier on during the, I suppose you could call it season at this point in time, and that is for the brilliant cockpit rig that is going to be provided by GT Omega Racing, the fantastic work that's been put together to put these prizes together. That will all be secured and completed over the course of today. So at the end of the broadcast, we will have a winner for you. Of course, that competition is all but closed. But for those who are still a part of Europe, at this point in time, you can head over to worldproracing.com and you can find yourself, navigate yourself very, very nicely, provide yourself a chance to win Assetto Corsa Competizione either on the PS4 or on PC. So make sure that you go over there and enter yourself into the prize draw to make sure that you get yourself an opportunity to join us in terms of being a sim racer. This racing part of the Stay Safe at Home initiative by the FIA, the Federation Internationale de l'Automobile, of course, which is the chief racing directive in the world at the moment. So make sure that you stay safe at home, of course, as part of motorsport and esports as well. Practice due to start in about 3 minutes' time. We'll be moving over then to qualifying and then over to the race, which is going to prove to be another case of contention. But Nicholas, we're talking about now names, and 15 minutes of practice doesn't seem like much on paper, but these drivers will be looking at trying to get those final runs in, thinking, okay, best possible place for qualifying. They'll be looking at, okay, racing's going to be very, very good, and we're going to be seeing very, very soon who is going to put themselves up top. But what has been the key around a legendary track like Spa-Francorchamps, which all of these drivers who have qualified so far have managed to get correct?
I think the biggest key is, just stay consistent, stay error-free, but also just have that pace completely nailed down. You have to be completely in control of your car, and generally, you have to stay, as it seemed so far, with the normal strategy. Most people who have tried to go for risky moves, they haven't been able to make it work quite as well as they would have wanted it to work. So I think it's going to be quite interesting to see in practice. Of course, first of all, the mind games already start in practice before qualifying, because a lot of people will use those 15 minutes to start pumping out qualifying lap times, to start pumping out their best pace to show them, just everyone else on the server, hey, I'm here, no one can stop me. Or perhaps people are going to try to start doing some pace on race runs, to start, just getting the feel already into the car, and then try to push it on maximum in the qualifying later.
And we are going to be seeing here today so many drivers looking to push on maximum, because those who are going to be on the outside looking in from third position on back, they have one option and one option only, and that is to push for a top 2 position as and when that becomes available. The winner of today's race will get themselves a set of Game Breaker Malta headphones to go along with the swag of being in that main event scene, that grand final. And of course, those drivers who find themselves at the very top, those are going to be the main players heading into next year and 2021, which of course leads to the national championship coming up for Maltese drivers. And the winner of said national championship will be heading to the FIA Motorsport Games, in which they will become Malta's representative driver for the action that will be going on there. It's going to be a treat next year. You're going to make sure that you do not want to miss anything that will be going on in terms of that scene. But in terms of a prize, Nicholas, to represent your country, to have that opportunity to race at the very highest echelons with some of the best drivers in the world, that's something that I think a lot of people will be dreaming about, and this is the place where it all starts for the drivers today, who will be looking to try and book the final 2 tickets into that final, as we now look at practice right now going about.
Yes, and the first car that we see in this has been a very popular choice already in the past weeks. the Audi R8 LMS, so even the pre-Evo stage. And as we have Ryan here heading into the pit lane, and now Bradley in another very nice car that we haven't seen as often, but we've seen it perform very well among the front engine cars, the Toyota FT1 Gran Turismo concept. As you said before, in the last couple of weeks, you know, very reminiscent of the new Supra, but this car actually existed before the new Supra came out. So a nice example of a car starting to exist in the virtual world before even making it to the real world.
And this is one of the things which makes Gran Turismo such a beautiful game to look at, such a beautiful game to actually be involved in, because it's not just all about the motorsport elements and trying to get as close as possible to what real racing is all about. There is also that element of fantasy and imagination and things you can do here inside this realm cannot do anywhere else. And one of those things have been such as the Vision Gran Turismo concepts, which have gone all the way back from Gran Turismo 5. You can look going forward, you've got all the tracks that have come in terms of virtual or fantasy tracks at the moment. This is a Mazda RX Vision GT3 concept being driven by Relax Racing at the moment, heading through towards these fantastic right-handers over towards Corner Paul Frere and the run over to Blanchimont Corner. But it's even the things like those tracks which become so very, very crucial to how Gran Turismo is looked at for the Manufacturers Cup and things like that. Tracks like Dragon Tail Raceway can go all the way back into the past and talk about circuits like Fantasy City Street, circuits like the Citadaria. You can talk about Tahiti Maze, you can talk about Trial Mountain. There are so many iconic tracks that come from Gran Turismo, which has pretty much shaped a whole generation's idea of what makes a good racetrack.
Yes, it's been quite a lot of impressive stuff from Gran Turismo, and here we see another car that we haven't seen yet, actually. Ferrari 458 GT3 in a very nice Kaspersky livery as well. And yeah, you said it, they have made a lot of impressive stuff, as I think that basically everyone in, you know, just gaming history, if you've played any Gran Turismo game or if you just have seen anything from racing games since the early 2000s, you know so many tracks from Gran Turismo. And even if it's just the test track from Gran Turismo 4, you know, you will at least see one Gran Turismo track throughout your entire lifetime. And you know, it's quite grand, like the grand finale. And speaking of the grand finale, there will also be a special prize for it next week.
We're not at liberty to discuss what this prize is at the moment, but all we do know is it's going to be something fantastic that we will be able to talk about next week. So this is the driver currently fastest in the Audi at the moment. This is Ryan here in a boatload of traffic coming up the very famous Eau Rouge Radion section. You head through the small kink left, up through the right, and then through the left again. It is the truest test of a car's handling up that section, because you have everything through that corner, really, Nicholas. You have the likes of the downforce that's needed to carry the momentum and the speed. You need great turning to make sure that the car is dealing with the elevation change that goes on through that section. And you've got to make sure that the car doesn't bottom out through that place as well, as Ryan effectively abandons ship on the lap and looks to try and get a bit more space. This is a very, very tough track with many iconic corners that pretty much symbolize racing in the modern world, and effectively this is a masterpiece of a circuit.
Most definitely it is, and you said it is a test for the car, but not just for the car, but also for the driver, especially for the driver. You need an absolute insane amount of courage and concentration to consistently be able to maneuver through this circuit. You have so much elevation change, you have so much on-camber, off-camber in the corners, and it's just never a dull moment around here. This is why so many people love Spa. This is why so many people love this circuit built into the Ardennes forests. It's just such an impressive track, visually and also just to drive, so it's you know, really not a big surprise that a lot of people are showing up to these casual races to just have a go on this track.
And of course, with this being the final bastion for so many drivers, this is a bolstered field, at least 11 drivers here today, which will mean that this will be a tough fought top two that we'll be looking at here at the moment. But a lot of people have been focusing on that strategy, and we've been talking about it time and time again. These vehicles have 9 times the rate of tyre accelerated wear. So what that means is that when the car is driving along the surface of the road, rubber is going to be coming off of the tyre onto the surface, rubbering in the track, and that's why you see darker patches of track compared to lighter patches of track. That's just where the rubber is being laid down. What that means is that those tyres are going to go off incredibly quickly. We know that the fuel can go a maximum of 6 laps if you can save as much as you possibly can over the course of a stint, but 15 laps here today, 5, 5 and 5 has seemingly been the best strategy, Nicholas, and it has been that the quickest compound of tyre, the soft compound of tyre, has not seen enough fall off to be challenged by those, say, using the medium compound of tyre. It seems like it's softs all the way that is the way forward.
Yes, the soft tire at the moment gives the most time. Of course, you know, a softer compound, it has a lot more grip, especially in these fast corners. But of course, it also falls off a lot more over the stint. However, this fall off has been proven to not quite be enough to be rivaled by medium or hard tire runners. We have seen people before with the medium compound, but they just abandoned this possible, you know, what we assume to be a double tire stint strategy. They'd abandoned that strategy to instead change to softs to try and salvage their race. But the big part here is, you mentioned the 9 times tire wear. If you make a mistake here, it's going to be 9 times as bad, of course.
Talking of mistakes, there is Bradley in the Toyota, which is looking absolutely fantastic, getting a system-administered 1 second slowdown penalty. Now, the way that this penalty is served is very unique to Gran Turismo Sport. You get that penalty of 1 second, and by slowing down through various sections of the track and letting go of the throttle in certain places, that 1 second gets docked down 10th by 10th until it is down to 0. If you do not serve all of your penalty by the end of the race, for example here, Nicholas, you still have to have that time added on at the end, as we look right now from a driver's eye perspective here, going into the double left-hand apex here of Pujon Corner and backing out of it then in 5th gear to serve down to 0.3 of a second of penalty. So that's how you do it, down to 0.2, 1/10, and that is a full penalty served. Just like that, you can see how much you have to lift off in that section to make sure that you are able to serve that penalty. But crucially, those penalties in the race, we've seen it all the way back in week number 1. Those penalties meant something in the fight for the podium.
Definitely. And to people who are newer to racing, if you're checking in, first of all, welcome to an amazing sport, no matter whether virtual or real. But second of all, 1 second may not sound like much. You know, it's just, 1 second. It just goes by, snap your fingers, and that second is passed. But that snap of a finger can cost you valuable positions at the end of the race, so you never really want to just keep a bit of penalty lying around. It's going to be really tricky if people here in big duels, you know, if they mount a penalty and they have to deliver it while keeping pace with people ahead or while defending a position, especially, because if there's one thing that you don't want to do while being right ahead of someone, you don't want to slow down.
Exactly, and it's almost all about placement as well for those who are coming in from ESTV and are more used, say, to an esports field like a League of Legends or a Dota or something like that. Almost the same as having a unit in a 5x5 skirmish and having one unit positioned out of place by a couple of mouse clicks, and that could be the very difference between, say, having a pentakill or, for example, getting yourself the ace. That's the sort of thing that we're looking at right here. Every position matters, and it is all about that placement that we see. Now, here is another one of those Toyota's FT1s that we're seeing right now from Dealpao at the moment, heading through Lake Coombe, this uphill, right, left, and into Malmedy of the right. So there you can see heading on through in Velocity Green. Now, last time out, Velocity had a fantastic team performance, 1-2 in the finals. They managed to get both of their drivers in. So this right now for Dealpao, if that Toyota can get in second position, 3 of the team into the final could be a huge bonus for what they would want to do as an initiative and as a team.
Most definitely. And I gotta say, it's actually a bit surprising to see another velocity car but not as an Audi, because, as you said, they got a 1-2, but both cars in Audis the last time around. To now see this car, this team, it's quite a surprise, to be honest, but a little bit of variety has never killed anyone. Instead, it's actually quite an enrichment, and we've seen so many different cars today already. We've seen the Beetle, we've seen the Audi, the Ferrari, the Mazda. It's such quite a nice change of pace, you know, because we have had these grids a little bit more monotone a couple of weeks ago, and now we have it quite mixed up.
We've seen so many different things. We've even seen a second type of Mazda in this field have a very good crack at the whip and a good attempt. We've seen companies like Porsche come in, and what has been key is that there have been a good range of winners over in this series, and we've seen 3 different manufacturers pick up a win of some description over the 4 races. This is one of them, the VW Beetle, right now being piloted by Antheus at the moment, who very nearly gets clobbered there by Relaxed Racing, going on through towards the Fania chicane, the right and then the left at 90 degrees each. And of course, that slowing down has meant that half a second of penalty has been administered there to Antheus, who serves that almost immediately. But this is one of the things we have also seen a range of talent in terms of this field, in terms of the gaps being put together. For example, we're seeing with Relaxed Racing right now, the difference is almost a second. Right now, Ryan here in practice, here, 2:16.7, that's good enough to be almost a second clear of the rest of the field, as we see a little bit of a marker board there off in the middle of the circuit. Now, that won't be helping drivers around here today. Most of the drivers will be using visual cues to hit the brakes into the corners, and if those marker boards start to get hit, that's going to be dramas. And with a larger field, which means there is more room for error out there on track, hitting a little thing here or there, bringing things onto the circuit, that's not going to be helping people.
Yeah, and it's these tricky corners as well, just in front of Puon, actually. It's quite hard to hit your mark there properly, because it's just a very difficult corner to get right, even when you can see your braking point properly. But yeah, that's going to be a bit of added difficulty. You have 11 cars in this field, or I think actually 12 if I saw it properly earlier. But either way, you don't want to miss your braking marker, because Puon especially, you go off the track a little bit, you're going to hit that AstroTurf, you're going to slide a bit further, you're going to go onto that tarmac runoff, which is thankfully forgiving, but it still costs so much time, and in that meantime, so many people can just go past you, and it's going to take even more time, you know, for you to just get pegged past them. And it's just these tiny mistakes that can really cost you the race.
Absolutely, and it's those small mistakes which always seem to add up come the end of a race, to see who puts themselves up at the very, very top. And of course, here today, the top 2 advancing to what they need. And speaking of the number 2, in a couple of minutes' time, we'll be moving over towards qualifying. 15 minutes of unlimited effort to try and get through. This is VTEC in the very nice chrome Audi, making a run up through Eau Rouge and Raidillon. But what's going to be key about qualifying is, yes, they've got unlimited attempts in that 15 minutes. Once the timer expires on 15 minutes, you are allowed to complete your lap. The difficulty is, look how long a lap is around here. It's 2.25 minutes, and that is 2.25 minutes to go out of the garage, out around the circuit to get an out lap, do a lap, and then out around the circuit to get an in lap again. You get mainly 3 attempts.
Yeah, it's quite difficult to get this entire situation properly, because of course we have this 9 times tire wear, and I would dare to say you only have one proper qualifying run on these tires. You have your out lap, then the hot lap, and then of course the in lap again to instantly get back new tires. Otherwise, you can pretty much just risk it for a 2-lap run, but besides that, I don't think that would be very profitable at all. We've seen people do it, but we've never really seen people improve by a greater margin than just barely a couple of hundreds.
Have seen over the course of qualifying time and time again that it's been all about putting together the perfect lap, and there's no better time to do it than the first opportunity that you have available to you. This is all about perfection. These are where the fastest times are going to be set, because every driver wants to get on the front for qualifying. The best possible place to get yourself a victory is from the front of the field. It's the easiest place to do it. If you start off a little bit further behind, it's going to be a lot tougher for things to get going. Qualifying has just started. 15 minutes have already been put on the clock, and most, if not all, of the drivers going out then on soft compound tyres to get the most grip out of what they have underneath them to make the push, try and get their times up as high as possible here in this field. Immediately a penalty for Ryan is going to slow him right down here on the Kemmel, straight the uphill rise towards the right, left, right. And what is so surprising when you get to a track like this is just how much elevation change this place has. This track technically is slightly longer than the FIA specification for how long a track should be, but when you have so much elevation change, you're going to see it right now down into Bruxelles corner. Look at how much of a drop there is. That's nearly 100-foot of drop.
Yeah, and you really notice it when you're a spectator there as well. It's really, really impressive when you see it firsthand. Spa is also one of these few tracks where you can, by foot, travel around the entirety of the lap. You know, of course, you cut a little bit of a corner at Brussels after Le Coum. You cut away through a little tunnel specifically made for spectators, but other than that, you just walk along the track for the entire lap, and it's quite a hike, depending, you know, which way you walk, if you're going in the reverse or in the direction of the track. Either way, you have to climb up that mountain up to the end of Kemmel Strait to Le Coum, but it's quite a hike up there, I can tell you that from experience. And of course, in the car, you also notice the way up the hill is a lot harder on the car than the way down the hill, because the way down the hill you accelerate quite a lot faster, logically, by the laws of gravity.
The laws of gravity certainly do not make life easy for this track. Of course, when you're putting more strain on the vehicle through the engine, trying to make sure everything works, going to be key. Want to go on board here with Ryan, if possible. Makes a small mistake there, trying to get all the grip possible to go onto the flying lap. And you can see here right now, we're going to head ourselves to the last source hairpin, the opening corner out on circuit. The slowest part, or one of the slowest parts on the circuit, downhill on camber, mind you. That means that the corner leans into like an American oval circuit, like say Indianapolis or Daytona, and you get a lot of grip by putting on the power earlier. Now up Eau Rouge and Radi on this fearsome section of track, which has been so well revered by drivers alike, who say that is one of the most amazing thrills when you get into a race car and you head up the Kemmel Straight towards Les Combes and Malmedy. This right, left, right, spot your braking marker on the left-hand side, and now you try and take as much curb as possible through this section, nice and smoothly. Ryan takes this now through the Malmedy corner, lots of curb on the exit, but down the hill into Bruxelles corner, the former Rivage corner, and you can see he's really fighting to get the car turned in. The track falls away from you here, and now into the former corner without a name. This is Jackie X, of course, a famous Belgian driver. This track, of course, in Belgium, Spa-Francorchamps, and now to the second half of the lap, the double apex left of Pouhon, and this is where the lap really gets interesting, Nicholas.
Yes, of course. We basically have the majority of the elevation change behind us. But in these coming corners here, this nice little chicane, the spectators that come here lovingly give it the nickname Piff Puff. Third or second gear, depending on what you prefer or how the gearing is set up for your car. Now coming into Stavelot, right-hander, also not quite as fast or as slow as you would think. And now Curve Paul Frère, where the old circuit, the 1960s F1 circuit on the country roads, rejoins this track. And just going flat out through this right kink, and now coming up to this left kink here to go through another big test of courage. Blanchimont here flat out takes away the entire entry curve, exit curve as well, and now hard on the brakes for the former bus stop. Now only chicane, and completely over the inside curb, and a little bit further on the right there than I think he would have wanted, but comes clean out of the corner and comes to the end of his lap.
A 17.4, so there's room for improvement here for Ryan at the moment. Mark has gone second provisionally at the moment, a second and a half behind, but Adam there moving up into third position. Bossman there in fifth at the moment, with the times coming in at the bottom left-hand side of your screen, and we are seeing a little bit of disparity between the times. You can see here, Boss in 5th is about 3.7 seconds off of the pace at the moment, needs a little bit more. Would not have been helped by the fact that right at the end of the lap was stuck a little bit behind Adam, so that would have meant that some of that time would have been scrubbed away. Yes, you get a draft, you get a punch in the air through here as Bossman actually gets dropped down to 6th thanks to Bradley, who goes 4th with the opening time. But this is the key here right now. If you're stuck behind a second driver out on track, there's a help because you get all of the draft down the straights. There's a hindrance because you get all of the dirty air and turbulence and vortices that come off of the back of the car, which makes life incredibly tough to get turned into a corner as Bradley dives down the inside of Bossman and says, time is of the essence, and time is money, and the money is all mine.
Yes, quite definitely, and I think he also just anticipated Bossman not to try and turn in a bit there. But as you said, there is so much with the dirty air in these cars. Of course it's GT cars, but these GT3, or well, Group 3 cars, they have quite a lot of aerodynamics already. I think for an optimum lap here, you really want, you know, just absolute draft from everyone in the first and third sector, but absolutely no draft in the second sector, because the second sector with Puon, with GKX Corner, with Piff Puff, you really need the downforce there, even if it's mid-speed. You really want that grip. You don't want any disturbance there whatsoever. And I think this is going to be the very most difficult part of qualifying, just getting that perfect gap here, because this, you know, just getting a bit of slipstream in Sector 1, up Camel Straight, that can already give you some tenths. And as we see Ryan here pull into the pits for the first time, getting a new set of rubber, already down to 51, so already down with his fuel there. And I think that he's only going to get a bit of new rubber there instead of also refueling, so he can head straight back out. You want to keep that car light, of course. The biggest difference between race and qualifying in these situations is, of course, that the car for qualifying is a lot lighter, since you don't have to drive by far as long as a distance, as we see Adam here not go into the pits, but instead go for a second flying lap.
And there is the time. It's 2.5 seconds off of what's needed, but is in 3rd position right now. So Adam out there will effectively sacrifice one of his runs and go for 2 lots of 2-lap stints. Now, there are pros and cons to this. The big pro, of course, is that if you haven't got it right on the first lap, you've still got the second lap to get there. The big well, there's 2 big cons that I can think of. Firstly, you lose the chance to go out there on a stint and have a 3rd set of fresh rubber to find even more time. But more importantly, any second lap will be the law of diminishing returns, because there'll be less tyre tread on the tyre to actually go out there and use as usable grip.
And we saw already Adam just up on that way up Eau Rouge and Radion. His car got very, very slippery up there. And I think he's already regretted that decision, as we see Mark here in P2. 1.5 seconds behind Ryan, but I don't think that he's going to be happy with that. I really think that he will try to improve on that more, to get closer to Ryan and, you know, to put a little bit more pressure on that, as he just stares at the back of that Mazda RX concept car as he goes through Puon to start his next lap soon.
Absolutely. This is Relax Racing, currently in 7th position on the 24-1. That is 6.6 seconds off the pace, but crucially, it's 3 seconds off the nearest competitor. So that Mazda with the rotary engine there in the front of it is struggling at the moment here. 7th position at the moment. But what we have seen from drivers is that they haven't necessarily put representative laps in. They can see Antheus running incredibly wide here through the Bruxelles corner and now into Jackie X. See the back stepping out, trying to go through. It's almost a case of really struggling to get things working right now for Antheus. There is a lot of time to go. Still has 5.5 minutes, but 5.5 minutes can go quickly. Adam into the pits, though. We've just seen on the timing screen there in 3rd position. This will be to get some tyres and to get back out and going again here in terms of this one. It will be only tyres that will be available. So now it's going to be a case of pretty much now to the end at this stage for that chrome Audi R8.
Yeah, 1 or maybe 2 last-ditch efforts that he can do in this qualifying session. And I think he'll want to make the most of that as he just lets by that Toyota
Oh,
FT1. Oh,
Briff's gone
and
fastest.
that's
The
the new
Ferra-
pole. That's the Ferrari.
The Ferrari's gone fastest. First time we've seen it. Briff's Nolo with a fantastic time and just about there, going on to a lap, I do believe. So, classifies position 1 at the moment, but not finding what is needed. I thought that we had pole position just there, but ultimately I don't think that the lap has been counted just yet. We'll stay with it because first lap still there on the bottom of the timing tower, says that it is Ryan's at the moment. We'll wait for clarification, but it looks like at the moment anyway, Briffs has got the car at the moment where it's needed, and there, back to reality, 11th position. That's just one of the little quirks here that comes along when a car is out there going for a lap. Briffs has not yet set a representative lap time, so I believe that was the out lap that we just saw. And of course, what is worth reminding people here about this, we got a little bit confused about the Ferrari, which has a little slide there going through Bruxelles and has to correct, is the fact that when a vehicle does an outlap, that pit lane juts out at turn number 1. So any lap that's an outlap will be naturally quicker than a full revolution of the circuit.
Yes, that's definitely the case here. Had a bit of an upset moment here, but yeah, back to reality, as you said. It was fun while it lasted. But yeah, we have Ryan just coming back around the circuit, coming up to Blanchimont now, and hopefully looking to improve, because that lap time is a little bit slower than he had set in practice. And I think just as a little psychological play, he's going to want to pump out a bit of a faster lap here as well.
Yeah, here's Ryan, pole position at the moment by a full second and a half. At this point in time, this could be very well improved as he makes the charge over the line. It's a short run, and there is the improvement. 16.8, that's 0.6 of a second of improvement, and Bradley has gone second on a 17.5. Bring it down, relax though, on a 17.3, moves up ahead of Bradley, so that was perfect in terms of time. Mark improves his time, but not position. Stays in 4th on an 18.4 at the moment, so that is key as drivers find those improvements out on circuit. But the top 3 split by 0.6 of a second only here with 2.5 minutes to go.
I have to say, this is quite a lot closer than we've seen so far, especially with the Mazda up in P2. That car has struggled quite a bit more in the last times we saw it, but that's a surprise. But a very welcome one indeed. Leopold as well, improving to 2.18.7. So people really finally finding their first or maybe even second win here in qualifying. Maybe a bit late, but better late than never.
Exactly, it's all about gaining those places. It doesn't matter if it happens in minute number 1. It doesn't matter if it happens in minute number 15. If you find that time, it's good. Briffs in the Ferrari has gone 6th at this point in time, we do believe. With that time, Adam bumped down to 7th. And Boss down into 8th position right now, and there is the Ferrari, not realising time to get back out on circuit, drives straight into the wall, and that is not quite the way forward. There is damage here in these vehicles, and you will see some scuff marks come up on these vehicles, and what's going to be key about how they deal with the damage here is that they get suspension damage and all the different hallmarks that makes a car not work. And the more that you start effectively using your car as a weapon around here, the worse your car's going to be, the more difficult it's going to be to keep things going with a minute 15 on the clock.
Yes, and of course, and not only suspension damage but also bodywork damage is, I think, the biggest problem here. Because, you know, if you get a dent in your normal road car, you're going to be angry, of course. It's not quite looking as pretty as before. But if you get a dent in the front of your race car here, of these Group 3 cars, you're going to lose a lot of downforce. And, you know, maybe if you place it wrong, quite a bit more drag, which doesn't only kill your cornering speed, but also can kill a little bit of your straight line speed. Because the drag, you know, the drag, which is the resistance of the air, of course, of this car, there's going to be a little bit more of that. And, yeah, that can cost you 1 or 2 kilometers an hour. That doesn't sound like much once again, but if you just continue this 1 to 2 kilometers an hour across these entire 7 kilometers and 4 meters, it adds up to quite a bit of time.
Absolutely it does. 15 seconds remaining here. A lot of drivers in the pit. So you got Ryan, who has decided is done. Bradley decided done. Mark done. Boss done in 7th position. They will not get out and around for another lap. Relax is going to get there. Ryan's just gone out onto track. This will be to get final practice in. We've seen Adam improve to a 19.2 out on the circuit, but the timer now has expired. They have that time there on the clock to get around and finish their laps as Relax gets a whole boatload of AstroTurf. They're coming out of Malmedy. You can see how much that Mazda's pushing on tyres, which will be now on their third lap around this circuit, so that's not going to be ideal. We go on board and have a look at this, but you can see there on the right hand side the sort of times that have been done. That's the 2:12 out lap, 2:17 the quickest, but then lost 1.1 seconds on the next lap. Into the left hand corner, that tank's going to be on empty, trying to get around the circuit. You can see right now also just next to that fuel gauge is how much life has gone from the tyres. You can see there a little bit has already been depleted out of the vehicle, and that's not ideal at all. 140 Ks, trying to put the power on and trying to get to the next gears. We'll see what the split is as he goes on through in towards the third sector. The timer mark will be here. You can see 1.8 seconds down, so this is going to be disastrous at this stage to get that time on the board, and even quicker. It will take a modern miracle to find anything more. You can see up to 6th gear right now at 250 kilometers an hour heading into the left. In terms of a rough conversion into miles an hour, that's about 165 if my memory is anywhere close to correct, through that section, through the right and into the pits, because Relax Racing was never going to find any improvements. There is Ryan, not on a lap, nor Bradley, nor Mark, as every driver, I think, is just getting themselves over towards the end of their times. Bossman not going to find much more either in terms of times, as this is Briffs currently in 10th position at the moment. We did say 6th earlier on, but again, that was a case of outlap that we were seeing out on circuit. Briffs has been unable to set any real representative time to make a challenge in that Ferrari, but as far as things stands, and you knock on wood that things are going to go okay, Ryan, I do believe, has got the pole position in the Audi, which has been by far and away the most popular vehicle in this field. And on top of that, with the balance of performance checks that have been done, they run baseline here in this series in terms of what they can do, so no real setup changes can be made. Ryan has proven this is the vehicle with the most wins so far in terms of manufacturer, with 2, and if things stay like this, could very easily become a third. Timer has now expired here in qualifying. Ryan on pole position, Relax Racing alongside, and then Bradley there in third position. As we take ourselves over to the racing that we have right now in these Group 3 category of cars here at Spa-Francorchamps. There you can see them all lining up. Here you got Bradley in third, Mark in fourth, Dealpal there in fifth. Then you got Adam, Bossman, Antheus, and Briffs making the 9 cars available. It's automated from this point onwards here until they get the signal to go. They are in a formation start here, so they will automatically, by the Gran Turismo system, drive out on their own. They'll be warming up the tyres, so to speak. That's also done by the system, and through the corners, about 1.5 seconds difference already in terms of a start. And when that clock hits 0, which it does now, we're racing for 15 laps now here at Spa-Francorchamps. Ryan in the Audi against, of course, Relax Racing there in the Mazda concept, and then there is the Toyota concept that Bradley has in third position. It's the very much virtual against the reality that we've got at the moment as they head through Eau Rouge and Radion up now for the first time here in this event. All drivers were nice and clean through the early sections then of this circuit, and Ryan looking immediately to pounce and build a gap, because that 1.5 seconds is already up now to 2.3 as Bradley begins his own chase. This is Dealpal in 5th position in the second of the Toyotas, now trying to chase down for 4th as the battle for 7th looks close.
As you said, we've had quite a clean start, but also already, just from the start, 2.2 seconds gap between the first 2. Not that gap here, though, with 5th, 6th, and 7th, as we have a move here from the Audi of Adam going past Dealpal in the Velocity Toyota, with Bossman just right behind him, looking to be the second Audi to find his way past the Toyota. But we had 2 drivers as well that won't be racing due to technical issues, sadly. So that can sadly always happen. We have it in real life and also in esports, of course. And that is Bossman making a clean move around the inside of Deal Power, just going before Pugon.
And this was the issue with Deal Power in terms of making that move. It was the mistake at Jackie's corner where everything started to just fall apart. Not comfortable on the cold tyres. Needs them up to temperature and quickly using them. You won't get much life here in these tyres, and you will be relying on setting good times quickly in this series to get that progress going forward. This is Adam in 5th. Bossman currently in 6th. There is Deal Power just behind in 7th position right now. But what is key is that everyone is fighting for those top 2 places right now, and first is already starting to walk away with things at the moment. This is Ryan here coming over to finish 1 lap out of the 15 that are available. You're officially 1/15th of the way through this race, ladies and gentlemen. It goes just like that, 2:22 flat, the benchmark at the moment, but times are expected to get quicker, and that second and third gap remains roughly 1.3 seconds at the moment. It seems a 2-car scrap going on for those second and third places, as 6th and 7th remain in line astern, 0.7 of a second that gap at the moment. So the rhythm's starting to be found by Deal Pow.
Most definitely, some people are finding their way into it. More than others, as it seems, though, because we have, of course, Ryan walking a bit away, which was quite honestly a bit of a surprise for me. I thought that the Master could be holding on to it a little bit more, and Bossman very much on the edge there through Radion, just keeps it together there. Nice little replay here, and yeah, this is what happens when you bottom out when the car is under high load. Very good job from him to keep it there. And now, as we come back here,
Lost the plate.
He has fallen back behind Deal Power, who of course has had a much cleaner run through Radion here. And that is really the importance, because you need to have a clean run through Radion to have that momentum up, because this straight at the end, the Camel Straight, it's so long, and you really need the run up, as it also goes quite steeply uphill.
Well, you say that, but there is a penalty to serve, 0.7 of a second, and that would have been 1 second earlier on at that Radion corner, so he's cut the corner a little bit too much, and the system says, nope, you can't get yourself that. It's going to be a little bit of issues. We're down to 8 now, as Anthesius in the Beetle has retired the car from the race, so we are down to 8 runners here in this event, and there's a little 10th being served of the penalty by the car in 6th place. That's Deal Pow at the moment, who is actually Deal Pow 6. So at the moment, it seems that 6 seems to be a lucky number. 0.6 penalty, 6th position, and such and such. There is Ryan in the lead of this race at the moment by a comfortable margin now, 3.6 seconds here at the moment, and we've seen these margins really balloon out in terms of these races so far, Nicholas. We've seen gaps of 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, even up as high as 30 seconds through 15 laps. So we have seen those gaps of drivers who do get at the front just able to walk away when it comes to these sorts of races. But Relax Racing doing just enough at the moment in second, in the final transfer spot of anybody, and slowly pulling away. That was about half a second that last time by on Bradley there in third. That Mazda against the Toyota. It's a Japanese affair here between those two manufacturers, and of course Toyota, parts made in Toyota. Mazda, a little bit different placing, so to speak, in terms of their geography.
I mean, overall, we also have to say here, this is pretty much the most colorful grid, especially when we consider the top 5 as they started this time that we had so far. But also, just now through La Source, the Master really got the perfect line, I'd say, just right up to the wall and already straightened out, so he could just go flat out on the throttle instantly. The penalty down to 0.3 now for Deal Pow, so he's going to start trying to catch up one more. You see his car black out, well, not black out, but, you know, ghost a little bit as he was on the brakes, so the penalty going down bit by bit there, as he's now slowly catching up to Adam, but he can't let himself have a breather yet, because Bossman is right on his tail. Bossman, even though having had a bit of a moment here once again at Brussels, I don't think that his tyres will be thanking him for that, and we still have a few more laps to go on these rubbers before we can head into the pits. But Bossman really desperate to not let Deal Power have a breather. So I think, oh, that's again, you see these little 4-wheel slides here. He's really not going to want to do this all race, because I think that's quite the opposite of the name of our second place runner, Relax Racing. It's going to be very stressful racing instead.
Absolutely. This is a case of driving heavy on the rear tyres, and this is one of the things that the Audi has in terms of a downfall. When it does get low in terms of the tyre grip, it's the rears that will go away in these vehicles first. That's going to mean that you get a lot of oversteer in the vehicle. The back is very likely to come and loop out around the back of the vehicle, and we've seen spins aplenty from the Audi R8 when they have gone into the paint when it comes to the tyres. Now, with all of those slides, that's definitely the coolest way to go around the corner, but definitely not the quickest. And this is going to bring this Ferrari of Briff's back into the battle the longer that things go on. Briff's, of course, currently 3 seconds back here off of the pace of Bossman, and that gap has come down by an entire second on the brakes there through that sector, so that's very good. But this is the key. Ryan also now starting to struggle on the tyres. A 2:19.4 that last time by, 1.4 seconds slower than the fastest lap of his race. And look at that gap. It's 2.7 seconds right now to Relax Racing, who seemingly has a vehicle that is a lot kinder on the tyres.
Yeah, the difference between these front and mid-engine and rear-engine cars is really, where the main weight lies. And, I mean, in the RX concept, the RX series, of course, very, very famous for these rotary engines with a little bit of struggle there. So, a rotary engine basically having a front motor, but due to its low weight, having pretty much the same weight distribution as a mid-engine car. But still, it could be that due to the way it's built, usually front-engine cars, they wear the front tires a bit more, as, mid-engine cars, due to the mid-position of the engine, they tend to slide a little bit more because the car is just so much more agile with the weight distribution, and, accordingly, they wear the rear tires a little bit more. So this might just be a little bit of a, good little advantage that Relax Racing has got himself onto that, as we look at Briff's another mid-engine car with the nice 458, a blast from the past, now in 7th position. And Bossman really, really made a few mistakes there. Earlier we saw him just touch the grass at the exit of Blanchimont, and I think that's, quite an understatement to how nervous his car is now with these worn tires, as you said, sliding as he does here again, Jesus. It's not the fastest way to go around, especially when these tires just really, really start to wear. It's basically like driving on rims.
Well, it's a case of what's the driving style like for Bossman, and it's clear that there is no confidence in the car anymore. The back stepping out 1, 2, 3 times in terms of the way it's going on, and I would even hazard a guess to say that those tyres will not be sitting pretty by the time a stop comes in. Already 5 seconds lost and more over the course of this lap by this. Now, Mark's coming into the pits here from 4th position right now. This is a big, big key moment here in terms of this race. Adam is also going to follow here, so 4 laps on the stint, both of whom I do believe will be going on to the soft compound. Briffs will also come in then on lap 4. Now, this is a very interesting play, as all those at the back go 4 laps. Everyone else will be going 5. There won't be as much fuel going into that vehicle, but you can see there 83 in terms of the fuel, so that's 5/6 of a tank only going in. This is key, and look at that from Adam going on to the medium compound of tyres with full fuel.
That's actually interesting to see, because as I've said before, we haven't seen a double stint strategy yet. Oh, that's even more interesting. But Bossman as well, actually. So I'm actually quite surprised here, because Riffs, of course, we haven't seen the Ferrari yet, I think, in these 5 weeks so far.
Absolutely
so
not.
I don't think, I don't know how the tires will be behaving on that car, but we've seen that the Audi is quite aggressive on tires, and Bossman, with these issues that he had in the early race, maybe he's just thinking, okay, I've lost enough time already, maybe I can try jump the others in the pit stops, if I just keep on these tires, and maybe if it works out. But we see here with Briffs, these hards don't have as much grip as the soft tires, of course, and I think he has to get used to that now quickly, rather than, very slowly, because he's going to lose more and more time.
Well, here's your race leader. This is Ryan, who's got 3 seconds at the front and will be due to come in this lap, or if he's been saving the fuel, the next. But being out there at the front of the field, the spearhead, so to speak. Oh, gets the AstroTurf there on the outside, has a big wiggle there, and that will cost 0.3 of a second, almost 0.4 now, hitting the brakes. This should be dive down into the pits time, and it is for the race leader. Expect Relax to follow, and does, and that will allow Bradley then, who's 3 seconds back of that, to think about coming down onto the lane. Also does in the Toyota, and Deal Power's the last of the Toyotas who should be due in to make a stop as well in 4th position. There you can see this stop is fully automated. They choose the settings that they want, they wait for the fuel, and then they go. You can't necessarily gain or lose time unless you put in less fuel in the stop, or you decide maybe not to take tyres. But tyres in terms of this one is shorter than fuel, so always the best option to take tyres here in terms of the stop. Ryan out and away again. Now look at this. Where is Mark going to come out in all of this strategy? Because you've got drivers coming out to the pits right now. There's Mark in 4th place. He's got 1 lap's worth of undercut, but unable to close down. And because he was unable to close up to Bradley in 3rd place, now the tyre disparity becomes a whole lot worse.
It's going to be quite interesting here, because Mark already is used to this car now, but a little bit of a wiggle there through Radion, so he's going to lose a tiny bit of time against Bradley. Quite interesting to see how these front-engine cars this week actually do seem to handle quite a bit better than before, or just that we have people who can deal with them a lot better than we had before. But yeah, Mark with the Audi, with the popular choice as it's been so far, the Audi has been the only car to win more than 1 race so far, and yeah, Ryan seems to be putting this car to good use once again. Even though Relax, he's really not willing to let up. 4.5 seconds, but we've seen before that he could close quite a bit of a gap just in the span of a lap, because we had the gap up to 4 seconds before and suddenly it was down to 2.5, so we're gonna have to wait and see.
Well, this is key, because the way that this has gone, 1.5 seconds lost in the pit stop by Relax, and that will probably be down to maybe more fuel usage from the Mazda compared to the Audi. So that's something to keep in mind here as Relax Racing tries to push down. That stop gap's going to be key. Bradley also keeps within that 3-second margin. So it seems to me like Ryan in the Audi has put in less fuel into the car compared to the rivals. So what that means is a number of things in terms of the way this race can go. It might just mean that Ryan's going to have a longer final stop, or more importantly, he may be trying to save fuel come the end.
And this is once again different strategies that we have here. But yeah, it's going to be that difficult decision of, is it going to be worth it? Simply because, you know, like, do you want to go full pace, or do you want to, you know, slow down a little bit more to go more pace, or well, more full pace, more than maximum in a 4-lap stint? But yeah, it's a quite difficult decision to make here, of course, which gets made even harder with the 9x tire wear.
And of course, sometimes there's the saying, going slower to go fast, and that might just be the case here that we could be seeing with Ryan in terms of strategy here today in this event. 4.4 seconds the gap at the moment. He leads over Relax Racing, Bradley in 3rd. Mark is 4th with Adam in 5th, and then you got Deal Pow, Briffs, and then Bossman, who's currently down at the bottom of the timing stand in 8th place. 2 drivers out of the race with technical issues here earlier on. They could not make the starting grid, and then of course we saw the retirement of Anathunes, which was not quite ideal. But 4.7 seconds the gap here. Relax Racing struggling in the early stages to get the tyres working, getting them up to temperature, getting them in range. But this is a second half of the race sort of car, which is almost a case to be made here, Nicholas, that is kind of a disadvantage really to Relax Racing, because you don't really get many laps to claw back gap time and time again.
Yeah, that is quite the difficulty here. It's 15 laps, of course. When you note it down to kilometers actually driven, it's over 100 kilometers that you drive. But of course, it's only about half an hour, and before you know it, as we see here already, we've basically reached the halfway point. So 4.8 seconds to catch that up. He's going to have to be quick about it. And, oh well, maybe even hope for a mistake of Ryan, which at the moment, with the form that Ryan is putting on, seems a bit unlikely to happen.
Well, this has been key going through. It's been that the later stages have been bad on the tyres. We saw a mini mistake earlier on from Ryan, but nothing really race damaging like spin or anything of the sort. It seems like it's line astern at the moment, and Ryan at the front of the field goes over the halfway stage in this race. Lap 8 out of 15 at the moment, and it's going to be very, very crucial. And as well, after the racing that we will have going on, we will be able to give you announcement results of the GT Omega ART cockpit giveaway, of course, on worldproracing.com. If you haven't already, you can go over to worldproracing.com, and there is still the ability, if you live in Europe, get yourself a copy of Assetto Corsa Competizione, and that is for PlayStation 4 and for PC, as Ryan has just set the fastest lap of the race on the fresh tyres with a 2:17.6.
Pretty much equivalent to his fastest lap that he did in qualifying before improving another couple tenths. So yeah, he's really finding back into his groove here. Really, I think it's quite obvious that he really likes this Audi, even though the gap just dropped down a little tiny bit, but it's a bit of a back and forth with these two, isn't it? I feel that Relax is getting quite well along with his Master here, and at the same time Ryan gets along quite well with his Audi. Those two actually, along these GT3 cars or Group 3 cars, a lot of them have V8s, and so the Audi and the Mazda RX concept, quite unique in their own way, because the Audi, of course, with the 5.2-liter V10 engine, and the Mazda with the very lovely rotary engine, so a very familiar sound to the legendary 787 and 767Bs, or if you don't know these sports cars from the 90s or 80s, pretty much just an old F1 car. Really a nice little screamer.
Absolutely. There is Bradley in third. He's got 6.5 seconds to the car behind in Mark, but crucially, the gap is 4 seconds to Relax Racing in second. So for that transfer, we'll just be seeing ever so brief glimpses through the Ardennes in terms of, oh, there's a car that I'm trying to race. It's in the distance and it's pulling away, and that's not what I want, and this is not part of the plan. And maybe if I was a tenth or two quicker, I might have a better opportunity of getting close enough to make something happen. But Bradley, now you would feel, needs to do something drastic, and the only thing I can think that can put Bradley anywhere near close enough, pit lap 9, 6 laps on the fuel and tyres, go for a do or die strat, because there's nothing left to lose in terms of this race for him at this stage.
It would be a risky strategy. Maybe it would work out, but it's quite difficult to tell at this stage. At the very start, Bradley was able to put quite a lot of pressure on Relax, because Relax seemed to have lost almost a second already at the start, as Ryan just kept on dragging away, as he's doing merrily right now, up to 5.4 seconds. But yeah, Bradley, dropping down from the only 1 second gap down to 4 seconds now, 4.2 actually to be precise. So yeah, the time's starting to run out for him, and I think for him the level of stress is approaching 99%.
And that's going to be crucial. Of course, that stress level really does go up. Of course, when you talk about how racers lose a lot of fluids when they battle, as there's Mark having a bit of a wiggle there in the second of the Audis in this field, currently 7.5 seconds behind on an island. But look at this battle here between Dealpal and Adam here, because that is Dealpal ahead of Adam now by 1.3 seconds there in the Toyota, and Adam here on the older tyres, mind you, will be looking to try and keep himself as close as possible, and that gap extending with every single corner, half a second there over the course of that section of road. This is the big disadvantage between compounds, or not necessarily compounds, but the big disadvantage between pitting a lap earlier to your rival. Dealpal on the fresher tyres on lap 9. We're looking to go through what has been key here in terms of this race, is that everyone who pitted on lap 4 has stayed out for a 5th lap going through. And now that comes down to a number of reasons. Adam trying to go for a 6-lap stint then to finish. It seems like nobody wants to go to a 3-stop strategy here today, Nicholas. They're looking here at 2 stops the way forward, but it's going to have to be an elongated last stint for a lot of drivers. Ryan to start lap 10.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting to see it. Oh, that's a bit of a wide line for Relax, so not quite working to plan for him now. Feeling the pressure, maybe after all, and Bradley sees this and he's going to be thinking himself, I can get in on this action. It's down to 2.9 seconds now, so that's 1.6 seconds just out of the window. And yeah, we see Mark coming into the pits now. As you said, he was one of the guys who went in earlier. And well, obviously going for the longer last stint. Not much more fuel to actually spare there. 3 liters left in that car. And Adam coming in with quite a bit more, with 17. But, well, maybe opting to give his mediums a bit of a chance to cool down. And just get the fuel in and, you know, just drive to the end after that.
Well, that's going to be key, and this is crucial because Mark's gone out on full fuel, 6 laps on the medium compound tyre, so that's going to be key. Adam will be looking to get out and away. In comes Bossman on the hard compound as well. See on the left-hand timing ticker as there is your race leader going on. So Adam switches back to the soft compound to finish the race. So wasn't happy with the mediums, lost time, lost a place as well. Needs to gain it back on the soft compound to bring this one going. This is Relax now in second position, but look at how much the mistakes are costing. Gap down to 2.1 seconds. This is where you start sensing blood in the water if you're Bradley. Started to bring that gap down. Little mistake though through pool 1, getting too cute there with the inside curb, and 2/10 are fettered away at this stage, and all of a sudden this now becomes a fight not for the race win, this now becomes a fight for a transfer.
Yeah, as you said, blood in the water, and in this situation Bradley is a great white shark. He's smelling the blood and he is getting very, very interested in the Mazda ahead of him. Of course, it's not for the win, but it is for the final ticket into the grand finale. And of course, this lap everyone will have to pit. So Bradley will probably just shoot into the pit lane, right behind Relax, and hope for the best to have his pit crew perform the best possible time for him.
Well, we're going to be seeing this in a moment. In comes the race leader, Ryan, to make the final stop of the day. Does Relax and Bradley both follow? In comes Relax, and Bradley, yes, does follow. Now, that's key. Bradley's got more fuel here than Relax does left in the tank. That's going to mean a shorter stop in comparison. Ryan's got to put a lot of fuel in the car to get the number up to what is needed, so he's got that margin to do so, but expect the gap between Relax and Bradley to just shrink down a little bit here in the fight for second and third. Off and away goes Ryan. Relax will get the go in about 3 seconds time. In fact, there goes the fuel, and there he goes, but you're going to see right now Deal Pow in on the lane. Bradley as well has taken a whole heap of fuel also in that, and has in fact taken about 10 litres more in a tank, or a 10th tank more than what Relax did. So clearly it seems that Toyota is a gas guzzler.
Yes, it actually seems quite to be that way, but the gap is already coming back down, so that gas guzzling might just be because, you know, he's running into the biggest power mode now. Most power down the straight line. Of course it's gonna drink a little bit more fuel, but of course it also gives you a lot more power on the straights, which you really want in these closing stages, as the gap goes down to 2.1 seconds, just under 2.1 seconds. And Relax will really be feeling not so relaxed anymore as he sees that Toyota FT1 closing in his rearview mirror.
Well, we're going on board right now with Bradley here. This is a crucial lap in terms of the way this race is looking. The gap down to 1.5 seconds, a whole second taken off here, and this is where you find pressure. Remember that Mazda struggles to get up to temperature early, and this outlap is the perfect time to attack. When you get in and around 1 second, you start to feel the benefits of draft, and this is what Bradley is trying to do. Slightly misses the apex though, there through the first part of Fania, Piff Puff as it's known, and all of a sudden that gap back at 1.5 seconds, and this is the key. At least mistakes through this section. You started to see marbles on the outside of the circuit as well, so mistakes are going to be compounded with less grip.
I think it's going to be quite interesting to see here how these two actually fight it out, because we could see quite a lot how Bradley was gaining on Relax Racing here, but just as an example, as he went into finals, he quite missed his entry point there. and already lost 3/10 again. So he could already be within 1 second, and within that 1 second margin, the slipstream is quite strong with this one. So, oh, but
He's got
despite
that.
that, already within a second. So, yeah, Relax really not feeling quite relaxed anymore, as they will now head onto the way down to Eau Rouge. And I think Relax's only hope in this situation will be that that Toyota will have quite awful effects in that dirty air.
I wonder if Relax is trying to fuel save a little bit, knowing that there was less fuel taken by the Mazda compared to the Toyota. This could be a case of trying to save something here for the end of the race. Bradley now in range, it's 0.6 of a second, and immediately to the right-hand side of the circuit, trying to break that slipstream here is Relax, but he's not going to be able to do so here very easily through this section, through the lefts and rights. And Lake Kuma now, Malmedy, the right-hand bend, 90 degrees up the hill. This is the highest point of the circuit before you descend back down, and all of a sudden, Relax is looking like he is going to be fair game at this stage. 4/10 now the gap.
That is quite a fast outlap from Bradley as well. I think he actually matched the pace of Ryan on that outlap, and that gap might come down a bit more as well. Now only 3.7 tenths, a bit up to 4 tenths again. Bit worse run out of Pouon, but that hasn't stopped him before. Quite close to right behind that. Relaxed quite nicely on the racing line, and it seems that Bradley is taking a bit of a different line there, a bit tighter there on the exit as well. But it seems to be working out so far, as we have Dielpau for 5th place in here, just coming out of Jack Yiggs, followed closely by Adam, who's now gaining at the same amount as Bradley was gaining on the Reacts earlier, as both of them miss the apex by quite a bit.
And that was more of Adam's mistake than it was Dielpau, so that gap up over a second again. This is the fight for second. Relax holds 0.6 of a second's advantage. You can see all of the road tax being used, so to speak, by Bradley there, using every inch of the road. Relax has struggled here through this final section of road. You can see how the Toyota just stalks the Mazda in the background. It looks like something out of a Super GT race, so to speak, with the GT300 and GT500 vehicles on the brakes into turn number 1. But I think that the Mazda has just got the tyres up temperature, has just got what is needed, and this is where that balance starts to go the other way. The tipping of the scale here from Bradley through Eau Rouge and Raidillon. This has to be solid right now to pick up that run, but again, 0.6 of a second, unable to do enough to really close down that margin. It will come down to about 4/10 here as they ride up the hill, but by no means close enough to make a lunge down the inside. This gap has to be slashed in half by the time they get to the line for a move up Lake Coombe Malmedy.
Actually quite interesting here as well though. Bradley just did the fastest laps, so he's really challenging for pace now. We saw as well earlier, Relax on his outlap, 2.4 seconds slower, so quite a bit slower than Bradley in the FT1 there, and also that FT1 looks quite stable and quite grippy up Eau Rouge and Raidillon. So Bradley really trying to play all of the strong points of his Toyota there all at once, while Relax is trying to hold on for dear life, or maybe just wait a little bit more. Maybe he knows that the Toyota might have a bit more tire wear there. We saw a lot of very aggressive steering inputs from Relax a couple laps ago when he was catching up so massively. And as we know, 9 times tire wear, that is quite a lot of tire wear that you're rubbing when you're doing very aggressive steering inputs, and the front tires won't like that one bit on longer stints.
And it's those stints that are key. Look at the gap now. That one coming up to 0.8, 0.9 of a second. 0.3 of a second of slowdown here for Ryan at the front of the pack. But is being reeled in, but it's not going to be enough at this stage. It needs to be 2 seconds a lap, and it's definitely not at this stage for Ryan. That gap is 6.4 seconds at the front of the field. He has a margin to play with at the moment. Relax is finally getting the Mazda to work, and suddenly that gap, as it did in the opening stint, is just stretching out over a second, and a little wiggle coming out to the final corner. It's now 1.3 as crossing the line Relax goes. This has been some perfect driving so far in terms of defense, because the best way to defend from the car behind is to drive off into the sunset.
That is definitely true, but also a quite nice and clean line, very aggressive on the inside of La Source. It's always quite easy because of that on-camber nature of the corner to just get dragged in a bit too much and actually strafe that inside wall, which slows you down massively, but also to take that corner minimally wrong and just have that bit of traction missing on the exit. But Relax really has been doing the most of that, really getting the most of the performance of that Mazda in that acceleration zone out of La Source. You see the gap going down under 6 seconds now, and the gap constantly going back up. What a slide there, just quick little moment, quite on edge here.
Get a look at this, he puts the power down, close, he almost tags the white line there as he goes on through. It's not a thing in these games where the white line paint does something, but he just tries to put the power down a little early, and the back decides that it wants to step out. The gap still 1.3 seconds behind. It's exactly what Relaxed wants here in this race. And in terms of Relaxed background, hill climber, always very easy. Not necessarily that he climbs hills by hand or anything like that, but he drives hill climb time trials, and that's going to be a key in terms of putting the one lap pace together. This is where that experience comes in. This is Ryan at the front of the field though, 2:18 flat that last time by, still 0.2 of a second to serve in terms of the penalty, but ultimately we'll have 1 and a little bit laps to go in terms of getting this race done. And really right now that gap has really climbed up, and I think the last stand here, Nicholas, has gone for Bradley.
Most definitely, and I don't think that he can actually climb back from that. Relax, as a hill climber, I think he's going to be feeling right at home here in the Ardennes, with quite a literal hill being in front of him and surrounding him here. And he's actually starting to catch up quite a lot to Ryan now as well, as we now started the 14th lap, so 2 laps to go with 5.5 seconds. Oh no, now the final lap actually. Sorry about that. Now lap 15, 1 lap to go. I don't think that he's going to be able to close that unless Ryan makes a mistake. But nevertheless, quite impressive pace from him here. It was 7 seconds just a few laps to go, and now down to 5.3, as we didn't think we'd see a catch-up like this in this race.
Well, this has been the issue. Ryan has had to be very, very cautious in the final stages. Those rear tyres will be in agony. There are still questions on the fuel numbers, if they are okay or not. They should be, with a gap of 5.3 seconds. But this begs the question, if those opening 2 stints were going to be good enough from Relax Racing there to get anywhere near, that could have been enough to bring this gap all in close. Again, another wiggle from Relax, trying to push to get everything out of the car. This is Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna sort of battles right now, hoping there's going to be a mistake by driving flat out, closing the gap down, and psychologically denting the confidence of the driver in front, and hoping, willing almost, to make a mistake. And this is where Relax is just trying to drive the best race possible, but ultimately it is old Father Time that is starting to catch up and say, no more, you will not be able to catch much more, because there's now only half a lap left. There's Bradley in 3rd position. Look how agonizing it is to see the carrot dangling on the stick in front of you, but unable to take any bite, any morsel, any scrap out of that, because the gap is just simply far too far. Here is Ryan. It's flat out except for one braking zone coming up through here, and towards the Blanchimont corner he comes along. Once more, it has been a case of drivers having lights to flag at this stage. We saw 4 of them in the opening 4 heats of drivers just able to break away, but Ryan at the moment, who will be just hoping that there's enough left to hit the brakes, go through the final couple of corners, will make sure that he is booking his place to next week's grand final with a fantastic drive in the Audi. Ryan books the place, and it will be to 2nd position. Relax coming over the line and taking just enough ahead of Bradley in 3rd position. Overall, a fantastic race between the top 3, one that didn't see positions change, but my goodness, Nicholas, it got close.
What a drive from Relax in the end. But also, what a drive just after the 2nd pit stop by Bradley. He really had us on the ropes there. every one of us, not just Relax. I'm really honest. I was so surprised by his sudden urgent pace there. But sadly, he missed his attack window, and that must be just such a terrible feeling when you know I was right there, but sadly, I just couldn't give it enough at the end. Relax, of course, going to be very happy to be representing again in the grand finale next week as, well, one of the few, if not the only front-engine car in the grand final. But yeah, quite impressive drive from him, needless to say. And yeah, Ryan is quite a gap ahead still, 5.6 seconds, one of the closer finishes, but still the winner here. And speaking of winners, I think it's time to show the winner for our GT Omega ART cockpit giveaway, which is Gianluigi C. from Malta.
Absolutely, he's done a fantastic job. There were over 2,800 entries into the competition, and Gianluigi, you have yourself a GT Omega ART cockpit heading over your way, courtesy of GT Omega. We'd like to extend a massive thank you to GT Omega for being so fantastically kind in terms of letting this prize go out to Gianluigi, who has picked up the prize overall. So we'll hopefully see that over to you very soon. Of course, for Ryan, he will get himself a set of Game Breaker Malta headphones as his prize for winning here in the 5th heat of things here today, for those who are watching all around the world. But in 1 week's time, it's the same time, it's the same place. It's a grand final that will be coming up, and it's going to be key. The 10 who have found themselves to be the very best will fight it out for a undetermined prize by what we know at the moment, but the prize is very much determined, and it's going to be massive for those who pick up that victory. The only place you can find that is with World Pro Racing on Facebook Live, on Twitch, and on YouTube, on Motorsport TV, on ESTV, and TVM Sport. That's going to be a massive, massive thing to say as we bring curtains to a close today for our presentation. We've seen, of course, the stewards have been working hard as always. Adrian Fagaya, the Chief Race Director. George Muscat has been the Chief Race Steward. And on the cameras, Justin and Nathan Mifsud. From Nicholas Hillebrand on my left-hand side, I have been Jake Sperry. And it is Ryan who had to work hard through every lap to pick up the victory overall here at Spa-Francorchamps. It was not a runaway, not by any stretch of the imagination, but a gap that had to be managed. And it was all about trying to make sure there is enough to get over the line. The 10 best that Malta have to offer come back in a week, and we will see who crowns themselves effectively Malta's master. This event is brought to you by World Pro Racing, the Malta Motorsport Federation, Game Breaker Malta, GMR Entertainment, WJ England and Son, Melita, Media Looks, Restream.io, Gaming Malta, VisitMalta.com, and TVM Sport.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
This is so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.